we invite you to have some juice with us. It will connect with what we're about to do today. Unfortunately, our group mate Jess couldn't make it, but luckily she was able to share some thoughts in the video. And she says, "Hello, everyone," and she looks excited to see everybody's presentations. For an overview of what we're going to dive into today, in our caucus space, we reflected on our experiences growing up white, how we came to understand our complicity in white supremacy, and we talked a lot about the confusion and shame that came up with stepping into understanding about racism and our part in it. We found ourselves imagining what might be possible if white people were brought into understanding and unlearning around white supremacy from a much younger age, and from a place of accountability and possibility.
So the intention behind this and who it is for. So 3 of us are parents and caregivers for little ones. And while there are a lot of amazing books on racism and white supremacy that we've encountered, especially in recent years, we haven't seen as many that are geared towards specifically white children, talking about white supremacy and talking to them about their part in it. And so we decided to write our own and believe that by writing this book, we could surface some of our reflections and understanding of white supremacy and our part in it, and also how to live instead into anti-racist and liberatory ways, and talk about our visions for freedom.
So we'll say more about how we got here and the what we uncovered in our caucus and how it led to the book. But we're going to start with the book. So I invite you to kind of settle in, imagine yourself as a little one, open your juice box if you feel so called, and we're gonna jump in. So, Nature Knows the Way by Adina Alpert, Casey Peller, Chelsea Manning, and Jessica Ramsey. Illustrations by Oscar and Casey. One quiet morning, a child walked through the forest. Birds chirped, leaves rustled, and sunlight danced through the branches. Suddenly, plop! A drop landed on the child's head. The child looked up. It wasn't rain. It was a tear.
All right. "Mother Nature," the child whispered, "why are you crying?" A soft voice drifted through the trees. "This was not how it was supposed to be. I see our forests cut down and rivers polluted to serve greed, giving some people more than they need and others less than they need. I see human beings hurting each other based on made-up ideas of power, sorting people into categories based on how they look, where they come from, what they believe in, and who they love. I see people, even your ancestors, little one, forgetting that they belong to each other and to the earth."
Mother Nature continued, "Some of your ancestors believed that they were better than others, and some still do today. They believe the color of one's skin decides if someone is good or bad, and whether or not they deserve to be treated like a fellow human being, something we now call race. They called themselves white because of their fair skin, and controlled people with black and brown skin, enslaving them and taking away their homes, rights, and freedom." The child slumped forward, dropped their head into their hands, and began to cry. Mother Nature embraced the child. "It's important to feel and grieve this pain, little one. It isn't too late to learn and choose a different way. Nature shows us how. Other plants and animals in nature understand that all living beings deserve to share the gifts of the earth gives us."
Based on these made-up ideas of race, white people used their power to separate everyone into different groups. People were only allowed to live, love, and work with people who looked like them. They were punished and sent away if they broke these rules. It happened before, it's happening now. How can we make it different? Nature knows the way. Our differences are what keep us alive and strong. She pointed to another nearby tree. See the flowers growing at her feet? They keep harmful bugs away, and the trees provide shade in return. See the vines growing up her trunk? They feed the soil nutrients to give the tree, while the tree supports the vine. Each plant could grow alone, but together they thrive, stronger, healthier, and more beautiful.
Some people want to keep everything for themselves. Those who come before you, and even some today, take land, food, and water away from people who need them. They forget we are meant to share. It happened before, it's happening now. How can we make it different? Nature knows the way. There is enough for us all. She pointed to the trees. See how they drink only water they need? The larger ones share sunlight with the smaller ones. Their roots send food to 6 sisters. That is the way.
Some people want to make decisions for everyone and don't give others a say. They believe they know what is best for everyone and punish people for sharing different ideas or making different decisions about how to live. It happened before, it's happening now. How can we make it different? Nature knows the way. We decide together. No one is the boss of anyone else. She looked up to the sky and the child's eyes followed. Look how the geese take turns flying at the front of their flock, facing the wind and directing their path together. No one goose always leads the flock. Everyone gets a turn directing, and no one gets too tired.
Many forget the value of what they already have. They throw things away without a care. Their things fill landfills, destroying the earth. It happened before, it's happening now. How can we make it different? Nature knows the way. Everything has value. It's up to us to see it. Mother Nature showed the child the mushrooms blooming at their feet. Look, said Mother Nature. Mushrooms turn dead plants and animals into food for living plants and animals, recycling old life into new life. Nothing is ever wasted, and all stages of life are valuable.
Some say, work harder, move faster, do more. Do it all by yourself and exactly how you are told, and never make a mistake. But no one was meant to live alone or like this. It happened before, it's happening now. How can we make it different? Nature knows the way. We are better together. Mother Nature pointed to the bison moving across the plains in the distance. See the bison? Alone, the strongest can outrun a storm. But instead, they travel together, protecting the eldest, youngest, and injured among them. They don't leave anyone behind.
The child sighed a big sigh, feeling the weight of all Mother Nature had shared on their shoulders. I feel so sad, like a bad person. You're not bad, and it is not your fault, little one, but it is your responsibility. All life is bound up together. The child nodded and asked, was all my family that came before me bad? No, little one. Some of your ancestors helped to cause these harms, and some did what you are doing. They learned a different way and worked hard to make it so all people could be free. You can follow in their footsteps and in the ways of nature.
Feeling the wisdom of the earth and all that Mother Nature had shared, the child took another breath and stood up, ready to carry what they'd learned. I will share what I have. I will care for all life. I will remember nature's way, and I won't do it alone. The child walked back home, past the bison, the mushrooms, the geese, the trees, the vines, and the flowers, and whispered, "Thank you for showing me the way." Mother Nature whispered back, "You're welcome, my child. We'll follow it together."
A note to parents and caregivers. Thank you for reading Nature Knows the Way with your child. Conversations about race can be uncomfortable, even painful at any age. The younger we begin talking to kids about racism and how we are all part of the systems that have been created because of it, the easier it is to move past guilt and shame to understanding and, most importantly, to action. While this book is written with white children as the primary audience, we believe it can be impactful for all children. We encourage parents and caregivers to take time to pause throughout the book and talk about specific examples in your own child's everyday life of both racist and anti-racist behaviors and actions to increase understanding. Children are naturally empathetic, curious, and capable of understanding more than we sometimes expect. When we speak to them with language rooted in love, truth, hope, we help them grow into thoughtful, compassionate, action-oriented people who can create a better future for humanity. We hope this book supports you in doing just that. Together, we can follow nature's way. With gratitude, Adina, Chelsea, Casey, and Jessica. I did what I knew to do. Now I do better. I know better. I do better. Maya Angelou. And then we have some recommended books for further reflection for both children and the grown-ups who hopefully share this with their family. And you can see those there.
So a bit more about how we got here. Yeah, if you know any publishers, just yeah. Y'all, it's hard to write a children's book. It was an experience. So you can see on the slide some of the prompts that were on our worksheet from the Deal facilitation team about what to explore in our conversation. So we talked about what culture identity was lost in becoming white. We talked about culture and language, relationships, and humanity of really being kind of a vessel for such harm. We were asked, what impact did it have on your family, on your politics? And we talked about a loss of true belonging, of an idea of opting into some sense of belonging, but finding that it's empty, and losing community and belonging in the process, going through trauma related to it, tapping into apathy, disassociation, isolation, and saviorism that shows up in politic for sure. Are there cultural practices you learned from your ancestors as a form of resistance to whiteness and cultural resilience? This was a really sweet part of our time together that ultimately got us to this book concept. Was thinking a lot about somatics and reconnecting to our bodies, connection to land, learning and acceptance, and actually, what comes from just really acknowledging and accepting how whiteness moves, in us and through us, and then reclaiming rituals and tapping into ideas of solidarity, practices of solidarity like mutual aid. So why a children's book about nature? We're going to each share a little bit. And as I said, we kind of got to this concept around nature, and Casey's going to say more about it, in really thinking about what are the practices that we've learned that help us resist whiteness and white supremacy and tap into cultural resilience. And earlier, something that came up for me in our discussions, really thinking about the first couple of prompts, was remembering the anger and resentment that I felt when I came to see clearly really what white Jews had given up and done to buy into whiteness, choosing false ideas of safety and power, and giving up so much culture and language in that assimilation. And all the while, of course, benefiting greatly from white supremacy, absolutely, and the white privilege there. And I spent a lot of time working to unpack and be accountable to that. But I wasn't expecting the kind of grief that came from seeing the choices my ancestors had made. I felt challenged by that. And I asked my parents once what they remembered about their parents' shifts into whiteness, and they didn't have an answer. It wasn't something that they had thought about or had language for. So I know that for me, if we had more tools that acknowledge and make space for conversation about how white supremacy has impacted all of us, obviously in different ways and to different extents, but that I think I would have been able to feel less alone in it. And I would have been able to have more compassion for my ancestors and the choices they made. And I would be more able to act against and unlearn white supremacy from a place of understanding, acceptance, and really rooted in all of my identity.
Similarly, I came to this project and was really moved by just how long it took for me to have these conversations and be introduced to these ideas. And one instance came up from when I was in high school, the first time I realized white supremacy culture had seeped into my brain. At the time, I couldn't recognize what it was but I was in a political science class. I went to a very large school, so often you didn't know people in your class until you had one with them. And we were having a discussion, don't remember what, and a Black classmate of mine was speaking, offered some great insight. And I was thinking to myself, reflecting on what he said, and I was like, wow, that was really great addition. I loved what he said. And I immediately realized, I'm why is there a level of surprise in my thought? And I was like, why is this happening to me? And it was, it haunted me for so long because I didn't understand. And I questioned my identity. I was who I thought I was, who I wanted to be. And no one around me had any language to help me through that moment. It was just a lot of you're being too hard on yourself, nothing constructive. And I just think about now, if I had been exposed to these ideas before, I could have done so much sooner what I was able to do with that moment. Now I'm using it to help unlearn. And I now question the first thought that comes into my head sometimes. And is this based on fact and lived experience or something that I was taught by culture? And that's what a big part of what this project was.
This is Casey. So again, part of the reason why we chose a children's book is that a lot of what came up in our reflections were like our earlier kind of formative developmental experiences when we were like, oh, race exists. There's a social something there. And I remember sharing with the Caucus that I grew up in a white family, wasn't really around people of color until I started going to like preschool. And I remember a day coming home from preschool, and I had been given like a little plastic ring out of like a cereal box from one of my classmates who had a crush on me. And I was so excited. And I ran home and I was talking to my grandparents and my mom. And I was like, look at this little ring that my friend got me. And I remember the response that I got was just so confusing. And scary and shameful when my papa responded with, if you ever cross a line or get involved with a Black boy, you're disowned from this family and you're not allowed in this home anymore. And I'm like 4. And I didn't really know how to respond to that. It felt very, I was just caught off guard and shocked and didn't know how to process that. And so I grew up without models, or anti-racism, and had actually the opposite. And so when thinking about the teacher and when we were crafting this story, thinking about nature, and I wanted to kind of do a call back to the last caucus. Someone mentioned the earth, we belong to it. And I think so much of what I was afraid of was to lose belonging in my family by finding belonging with other people who they didn't feel like I should belong with. And so that became really important in developing this story and teaching children in a way that it's not necessarily an adult or a person or like a hero figure that they're looking up to, but something that's right outside.
I don't know why it's not showing the... Okay.
Hi, everyone. So sorry I'm missing you today. Can't wait to see everyone's presentations. For me personally, as a parent of 2 young boys, reading books to them every night is one of the most powerful tools that my wife and I have to spark learning and conversation around deep topics like race, identity, and culture. As parents and caregivers, I know that there's just so many things we want to teach kids, and we don't always have the right language at the right time to gracefully step into every conversation, and books help us do that. And this passion and perspective that I have now as a parent is deeply rooted in my own lived experience, which came up a lot during this process. So just having the gift of parents who intentionally built community with people of other cultures, races, and identities. Also, that didn't come with the tools and the space to process the racist ideologies and all of the emotions that I learned in my own white community and that I'm just now learning to articulate and understand. I want to give my kids the safe space, the open conversation, and the tools to connect to themselves and to live anti-racist values from the start. And I think creating a book like this just deeply resonated as a tool for this. So while the process brought up a lot of difficult realities that we as white people know and understand now that we've lost due to white supremacy culture, it was also healing to create something that could help children take a different path starting now.
Awesome. So we learned a lot through this process, and a lot of that came out in the book. A big one was that nature was the greatest teacher. It was really easy to come up with examples from nature of how to do things right. What was a lot harder was to explain white supremacy, and especially in a way that would be more accessible to children, our target audience. But that's where nature was accessible. And so it really pushed us to go back to basics and, go through that process intentionally. Resisting perfection was a really hard one on this. None of us are children books writers. Especially at the start, this was really hard. But we were able to tap into that creativity and that imagination, and that really helped us through this process. And then also just, being the white caucus, we had to be super intentional. And in our conversations, just really understanding how white supremacy can be the default in so much. And so really working hard to unlearn our own patterns of, especially around shame, and then being able to move forward and use our lessons and experiences to help teach children.
And to close us out, some reflections on what our visions of freedom are. So what do white people stand to gain in a world free from white supremacy and supremacy in general? We can reclaim our belonging in our communities. That's definitely a part of the vision, and a lot of where our kind of root wounds lie are in this wanting to belong. Reclaiming our humanity. So as Adina has put, and I love the language of not being used as a vessel of harm. That's definitely in our vision for freedom. Having collective access for all people to have the resources that they need, and a real understanding of our interdependency, and also not having to rely on flawed systems for basic survival, but to rely on our community. Authenticity, so being able to show up genuinely in our relationships and all the spaces that we inhabit. True transformation, to trust that white people have the space to unlearn and space to grow, that there is a path to liberation. And the last piece there is wellness, which really has to do with our nervous systems being relaxed with other people and living beings. So thank you.